And good morning, everyone. And we are here for Mariners baseball. And boy, just less than 12 hours ago, what an absolute disaster it was. And the funniest part of it was, I know I already said it to everyone else yesterday, but I came home from work. I was just really exhausted. Work really kicked my butt in all cylinders. I came home. I was sleepy. I was tired. The game was 2-1 Dodgers, and I was thinking, yeah, maybe it'll be still 2-1, or maybe it'll be 2-2 with 3 innings left. I'll take a nap and come back. As soon as I wake up, 8-1, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going back to sleep. But then another twisted part of my thoughts were maybe Mariner fans are so mad that they just need to vent. So I went on live just to let Mariner fans do that, and it actually went pretty well. A lot of fans came in. They said a lot what they needed to say, and so many people came in, and actually was my new record viewed show of 610. So that was the highlight. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
It was the highlight of the YouTube channel, and now here I am with another quote emergency podcast with Steve. How are you, man?
Yeah. I'm okay. Yeah, dude, I'm feeling pretty good. It's a Thursday morning. But yeah, you know what's interesting is I value my time. It's a very true statement, right? Like as I get older, I prioritize what I do at any given point of the day. And when it comes to baseball, man, dude, I just want to be entertained. That's professional sports, right? It's entertainment. You turn it on because you're hoping that your hometown team can give you some form of entertainment, right? Even in losses, if you lose and you go down swinging with your best players and you make all the right decisions and it's just not in the cards, okay, that's fine. But when it's this, and every single season in your like every single game, it's something ultimately goes wrong, and it's it just for whatever reason, man, your team goes down in flames. It's just not fun to watch. Yesterday, dude, when it was 3-1, I turned it off. I was like, dude, this is not gonna trend in the right direction. These Mariners are not going to hold the Dodgers to 3 and storm back and win 6-3. That's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, 3-1 turned into 8-1 or 8-2, and then it was like 8-4, and I was like, yeah, okay. Like that's I turned it off, and I was like, eh. Like
I don't blame you.
There's no. That's the thing. It's like right now we are hoping and praying that this team can snap out of a historically bad spin with a historically bad offense. And it's like, it's like watching somebody throw darts at a dartboard, hoping something sticks. It's like watching the New York Jets. You know what I mean? It's like every single year, it's like, does this work? Does this work? Nope. Okay. Does this? Nope. Didn't work. But, it's like pivot. Nope. It's like Teoscar Hernandez. Nope. We can't do that because he had 300 strikeouts. And it's like, then you see him, then you see him in LA just crushing a baseball, and it's like, okay, yeah, that probably was the wrong move. It's just anything that can go wrong is magnified 100%, and now it's to a point where you almost have to do something to show fans that you're going to hold yourself and you're going to hold yourself and this team responsible and accountable. And unfortunately, we're at that spot now where even a turnaround and getting into the playoffs probably is not going to help things at all, because it's like, I don't even think that helps.
The crazy thing is, like, despite everything you say, I think for some reason, and you may disagree, I think even if the Mariners even pull a 96, if you know what that even means, where they quote get close, got within one game of Houston, just like when the 96 Mariners got within one game of Texas. And the only reason I remember that, and the reason why people like us may remember that, is because this videotape called "You Gotta Love These Guys," that when they were talking about
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, God, I love these guys. A dead fish saying it. I think if that even happens, I think somehow Jerry and Scott is somehow going to still get extensions. That terrifies me. Like, even if they do something like that, John Stan's gonna be like, "Okay, you didn't make it, but hey, you made it exciting in September. Here's your extension, boys."
That cannot be the measuring stick, right? So being competitive, and then like that's the thing. It's like, I understand, man, and some Mariner fans will take that and understand that this franchise has not won a thing. Yeah, it's won a few division titles. It's won 2, but even in those series, what did we win? That would be nothing. We didn't even get to a World Series. Like, it would be one thing if we had gotten to a World Series and it was competitive and we took it to 6, and ultimately we just came up short because we don't know how to win those type of series, right? It's understandable. But we haven't even been to a World Series. We're nearly 50 years deep into this franchise's history, a half a century, and we have yet to see a World Series. Okay, so I understand. Fans will take their small victories where they find them, right? Because that's the only thing they have to cling on to. But for the rest of us who understand that the expectation is either you play to win or you don't play at all, right? That should be your bar, right? We're either going to do this to win, or we're just not going to do this, right? So for guys like Jerry Dipoto, who go out there and say that we're doing fans a favor and that if we can just win at 54% of the time, to me, all that says is that you're baking in excuses for the reason why you can't get this team over the hump. That's what it tells me. And that tells me that you should not be in this position, right? Because the Mariners can, if they want to, if they choose to, they can spend with the Dodgers. They got the money. Jerry Dipoto just chooses not to. That's not how he builds baseball teams. And so, unfortunately, when this happens, and it goes south, the fans are going to turn on you. And right now, we have seen it now. Jerry Dipoto and Scott Service have been in this franchise for basically a decade, with one playoff appearance to their name. And by the way, that was a laughing embarrassment of a divisional series against Houston. The way that ended was an absolute embarrassment. And yet there was good vibes because we hadn't seen a playoff appearance in 22 years. So fans were willing to take it as long as they saw upwards progression. And we did not capitalize on that momentum. As a matter of fact, we did the exact opposite in 2023, and we did it again in 2024, and these are the results.
They spiraled even faster than the 95 Mariners did. At least 95, they at least kept it somewhat exciting and returned to the playoffs in 97, more like limped their way in 97.
Sure.
And I guess rebounded in 2000 and 2001. But this team sounds like it's even worse than, I think it may even be going back to 2020 levels. Not even let alone not even 2021. I think that's how bad it's getting.
Well, the interesting thing was that, you make the decision not to bring Carlos Santana and Mitch Haniger back. And the idea is that, okay, fine, we're going to improve those spots and we're going to get better in those spots. And they didn't. As a matter of fact,
they claimed that they didn't have money for, at least, I guess, Mitch Haniger at the time, and they didn't have money for Carlos Santana, but yet they had money to spend on AJ Pollock, a freaking platoon guy.
Yeah. Well, but also, when they traded for Teoscar Hernandez, he was making $15 million a season, right? So it's like you don't have the money to bring back Carlos Santana on a 1-year deal for $12 million, but you're going to trade for a dude. You're going to trade for a dude who literally does not fit for 15 and bring in AJ Pollock for 8, right? And it's like your starting DH was Tommy La Stella. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, fine. So 2023 ends in a September collapse, and then you spend the entire offseason telling us how it's going to be better because we're building this lineup based on contact. And then you come into the 2024 season and there is literally no contact.
The best contact you're seeing is a foul ball off of a 92-mile-an-hour fastball right down the plate.
right, this team literally cannot square up a fastball, and we've seen it all season long. And so now the question is it the players, or is it a combination of your hitting philosophy in what you're expecting, and then of course during this historic fall from grace, you're coming out now. Scott Service is coming out now saying, talking about how they focus too much on launch angle and not enough on simple contact, and it's like a face palm. It's unbelievable. So as far as I'm concerned, man, I have a feeling I know how this is going to end, and it's not going to end well. And it's a shame too, because right now we're in the midst of one of the best starting pitching rotations I've seen in this franchise's history, and it almost seems like it's Felix Hernandez all over again, right? You're wasting something special, and it's not just let's fire Scott, although that would be a step in the right direction, because you're showing accountability. You're holding yourself accountable as a franchise and saying, okay, you know what, it is what it is. But the reality is, it's only 50% of the equation, because Scott didn't build this team. Jerry built this team. Jerry's the one that stood front and center in the offseason and said, this is going to get better because we're building this around contact. And it makes it even embarrassing when you see Teoscar Hernandez in the Dodger uniform just absolutely crushing a baseball. That makes it worse. To me, that makes it worse, even though I don't think that Teoscar would even come close to those numbers in a Mariner uniform. But it just it magnifies things even worse. It makes it even worse. So unless John Stanton cleans house, and unless he does that next year, I'll cover the Mariners, but at the end of the season, I know exactly where this team will be, and it won't be in a World Series.
Couple crazy things. And first, I'm gonna go with Teoscar. And first off, I will still eat my words saying that it was a great decision to get rid of him, but that was only because it was under the impression. I was like, okay, they're going to save $20 million to get hopefully someone better, which that didn't happen. But the scarier part is, had the Mariners just write a $20 million blank check, they could have just wrote a fake check to Teoscar Hernandez for the qualifying offer. And he says no, which he probably would have, because not only would he probably want to play for a winner, but he also had his complaints about T-Mobile Park, I guess. Had he say no to that, Mariners get a first-round pick, where maybe Jerry Dipoto would have gotten his first-round pick and used it on prospects that he would have loved to hoard for the next 4 years if he even is around. But the Mariners didn't even do that. And even I'm one of those fools that say, yeah, you know what, let's not extend a qualifying offer. Let's maybe save money on Shohei Ohtani. Nope, didn't happen.
Nope.
And the crazier part is, and I know I said this countlessly on the shows, had the Mariners just stood pat, even like, let's say they don't even trade Paul Sewald, and they just kept the same team together for the entirety between then and now, I think the Mariners could be in the lead with that division, because you would have kept Eugenio Suarez. You would have kept a young and hungry Jared Kelenic. I'm not saying Kelenic would have been any better, but honestly, I think we could still use his Atlanta numbers, and they probably still would have been similar to Seattle anyway, because I think that's just what we're seeing out of Jared Kelenic.
Right.
And we would have had Eugenio Suarez. Right. I think he was the true manager of the Mariners last season, the last 2 years. And since that leadership's gone, the chemistry just died. So had the Mariners just did the bare minimum, just do nothing, they'd be a much better team.
Possibly had they just kept everything, have they kept everything intact from 2023 and then just added Randy Arozarena, right? Right. So your outfield is Kelenic, Kelenic, Julio, and Randy Arozarena. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, maybe. But it is what it is, right? The decisions were made. This team got progressively worse. The trade for trading Robbie Ray
for Mitch, a fossil Mitch Haniger. And I also said I also signed off and said, you know what, it's okay, because I don't want to wait on Robbie Ray for July.
Well, you're just bringing vibes. You're trying to recreate vibes. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to bring the good vibes back. But the interesting thing was it's like when you look at some of these deals, The first thing I do, it's funny, like when it comes to veteran acquisition, I always look at age. And I always look at Major League service time, right? Like, Polanco has been playing baseball since he was 19 years old at the big league level. He's 31. So he's already been doing this for a decade, right? So you're starting to wonder whether or not maybe this is the beginning of the end. Mitch Haniger, who has dealt with injuries for the last 6 years of his career, you're wondering, he's 33, and you're wondering if he's either still in his prime or if his injuries have caught up. And of course, Mitch Garver, who's also been dealing with injuries, he's also 33 years old. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, it's one thing to bring veteran leadership in, but you also have to wonder whether or not this is like, is Jerry DiPoto trying to bring in high risk, high reward guys, right? Guys who are at the end of their primes. Maybe they can milk out one good season left. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I'm kind of with you on that. When I think about it, it's like if they would have just kept the band together for one more season and also kept, and also just made one big acquisition in the offseason to add to that, like if they would have just kept Kelnick, kept Suarez and added Randy Rosarina, traded some of their prospects for that, what kind of team would this be? But unfortunately that's not the case.
No, it's not. And I think we've talked about as much as we could about this issue, but the interesting part was a couple interesting things I saw out of Ryan Divish. And I know there's a lot of Mariner fans that don't really like Ryan Divish, but the thing is, it's the man's job. He can't talk poo-poo, just like Root Sports can't. So at this point, it's like, let us do the butt kicking at this point. But the interesting thing I saw was, and what really was interesting was after the game, when I was doing the show, I was like waiting for Scott Service to come on because I was like, okay, maybe he'll say something because he usually does, but it turns out he wasn't even there. I mean, Root Sports wasn't able to cover it, but here was the tweet by Ryan Divish. Service had a team meeting after the game instructing players to clear their heads on the off day to get away from baseball. So he started the media session later than usual. Apparently, Root ended the post-game show while we were still interviewing based on text messages. They had a guy there filming it, and I have yet to see any of that. I haven't seen any of those like interviews out of it. And the red flag I got out of that was, if I'm the manager of this team, I would have not given them the day off. They'll get a nice little sleep in the plane ride. Maybe that's where they can take their mind off. But then once they land in Seattle, they're going straight to practice and they're going to work on everything. Like, I'm not giving them a day off. I'm making them grind through this because this road trip is unacceptable. Like, the road trip, they should have not been 1-9. If they had kept 5-5, we're tied for this division. If they just did the bare minimum, played 500 ball,
sure,
they are tied with Houston. What were your thoughts when Ryan Divish reported that? Like, Scott Service say, "Oh yeah, take a day off, guys."
Well, initially, and this was before that. The days off comment. Him holding a team meeting and telling everybody to take a day off. When I didn't see that presser, I thought the hammer was coming, right? Because this is getting out of hand. This is getting very, very, very much out of hand. It's a 1-8 road trip, man, against teams that, outside of the Dodgers. You understand the Dodgers, right? You would expect them to show up at least against the Dodgers and make it competitive. Nope. The Tigers. No, you got nothing. You know what I mean? Like this is, I was at that Detroit series and it looked like a team that literally did not give a shit. And I apologize for making those remarks, but that's a direct reflection of the arrogance of their manager, where it's like, it's okay, it's all good, man, everything is good. Like, we're not like, there's no worries.
Day off.
Just take a day off, man. No. How about you take a day off, bud? How about you clear your head? You know what I mean? To me, I thought the hammer was coming, and I know Divish went on to say that firing DiPoto firing Jerry does nothing to improve the direction of this team. And, of course, he's got to say what he's got to say. But the reality is that, have this team be on the grind. Give this team a day off. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this team is flawed. This team is absolutely flawed. And so, go ahead. Give them a day off. Get them, tell them to go to the beach. Tell them to go to the zoo. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Like, because when they step back on the field, it's going to be the exact same team with the exact same problems. You know what I mean? It doesn't, like, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, it is what it is. Like, this is the team that Jerry Dipoto put on the field. Flaws and all. It is what it is. So it doesn't matter. Right? And so until you are willing to do the uncomfortable decision, which is hit the reset button, hit the refresh button. Okay, whatever, man. Take as many days off as you want. Whatever. Take a mental break day. Go full Julio, right? What Scotty did earlier this year with Julio, giving a mental break day, mental health break day. It's like no, like whatever.
How about let's throw a nice little birthday party for one of the Mariners in July in the middle of their meltdown. Like when I saw that picture,
yeah,
I know a lot of people gave me flack for it. They're like, oh, but they're just having a mental health night. I'm like, oh, come on. They didn't even seem focused. They just seemed focused on partying. I'm like, you could do that in the off season, sure, but not in the middle of the season where Houston's kicking butt and the Mariners are losing their division lead. That's why I had issues with that party. And I think it's catching up. I know that's too much to see and too much to read into, but everything we have seen, I think the dots are connecting. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was there was that article by Ryan Divish, and the title was Mariners manager Scott Service keeps focus on field with fans, clamoring for change. I'm not able to read the whole thing because I'm not subscribed to it, and I don't really have a reason to subscribe to Seattle Times, but did you read that article? Were you able to access that article? Oh, so
no, because I don't have a reason to subscribe either. But I'll just say this: that man, the pitch for the village is coming with pitchforks, man, and that's the reality, right? Understand that Scott Service is a manager of a professional sports team. Okay, this is like baseball, just like football, just like basketball, soccer, whatever. It's results driven. Okay, you are responsible for winning. You'll take the credit when the team wins, but you also have to be willing to take the credit when the team is absolutely not performing up to standards. And understand that the expectations were set by the Mariners, not by fans, by the Mariners themselves. Last year with that crazy commercial where, like in the clubhouse, where on the whiteboard it says World Series bound. Like that was set by the organization themselves, right? They're the ones that fired up the fan base only to be let down. Like this is not on the fans for putting the expectations high, but regardless of who sets the expectations, there is a certain amount of culpability when it comes to the performance of this team that you have to be willing to eat when things turn south. And this is where we're at. Okay. The Mariners had a 10-game lead. Even with all the flaws, and yes, it was a lot of it had to do with the Houston Astros getting off to a bad start. Understood. But they had a 10-game lead. And you bait these 10-game leads for bad times with the eventual result that you're going to be able to rebound, but the Mariners have not been able to rebound. Okay. At this point, Scott Service is responsible. It's his team. He stands front and center. He's the one that's in front of the microphone after every single ball game. It's his team. And he has to be the one that, he's responsible for this. Like this team, Dustin here in the chat room says Scott's in an impossible position. These guys are 215 hitters. Exactly. He has to be the one responsible for that one. And unfortunately, he's the one that takes the bullets. He's the one that takes the shots, man.
And he's not even taking responsibility. All he is saying in every single press conference, same exact thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's do a role play. Like, pretend you're Scott Service, I'm the media.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be
Sure.
like, hey, Scott, take me back to that game. Like, what was with that decision that you made, and about putting in, like, pulling your starter after just 85 pitches, and take me about the fact that the offense kind of is not playing up to their expectations.
Everything's great, man. There's no worries. All the vibes are good. Don't worry about it. Everything's good, man. We're gonna be there, and we're gonna be there in September. It's not about it's not about the decision in itself. It's just the results didn't go our way, and we felt that Sauce had the ability to get that left-hander out at the time, so we made the decision, and it just didn't go our way. Such is life.
That's exactly what he says. Takes absolutely zero responsibility, and he doubles down about it. And he thinks it's like a winning decision. Like, and the vibe he's giving off is like, oh yeah, we're just load managing so we can just get ready for the playoffs. But here's a reminder: Scott Service still load managed during the playoffs. Example: he yanked Logan Gilbert in Game 1 of the American League Division Series of 2022 after 84 pitches. Granted, yes, he gave up 3 runs.
Sure,
but he settled down.
Right.
He cooled their offense eventually, and then he lets the whole bullpen.
To me, it's the arrogance, right? It's like, I like, this was like about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, where in his post game, he's like, yeah, we're just doing these things to prepare ourselves for the playoffs, and I was dumbfounded. It's like, playoffs. It's like, there's a good shot that you're not even going to be in the playoffs. And every game, like, this was like, maybe it was like in and around the deadline area where it was like, listen, man, you're now in a 60-game sprint to the finish line, and every game matters. Every game matters. So every decision that you do that's botched is magnified, 100%. Like, you have to, like, it's not about the playoffs. It's about the game that's right in front of you. And every game there has to be a sense of urgency, which means you're going to have to be maybe a little bit more aggressive than you would like to be, which means aggressive early in count, stealing bases. You know what I mean? Doing the little things that are necessary to win. And that is not happening at all.
Not at all.
At all. And it's a shame too. Because this team is not going to be in the playoffs this year.
It's not, unless the only light that we see at the end of this tunnel right now is, hate to say it, it's the schedule. Houston has a more competitive schedule. Mariners have a less than competitive schedule. But here's the problem. It doesn't matter. Houston can go on their meltdown, but the Mariners are going to match that meltdown anyway, because it's already been seen. They couldn't handle anything on the Tigers. They couldn't handle anything on the Pirates.
Right.
They couldn't even handle crappy hitters against the Dodgers. Now, to the credit, I will give it credit. The Mariners were at least able to handle their big 4. Shohei Ohtani, Teoscar Hernandez, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. It's not like they killed the Mariners of any way, with the exception of that 3rd game, fine. But they were able to handle them. But then when you get to Max Muncy and Gavin Lux and Jason Hayward, out of all people, they got killed by those guys.
Well, let's just understand that the Mariners laid an egg against the Nationals. They got swept by the Angels. They lost 2 or 3 to the Tigers in Seattle, and then they got swept by the Tigers on the road.
They should have been swept by the Tigers at home. That right fielder should have caught that, and I kind of wish he did, just to justify the humiliation even further.
That is the measuring stick of the team that you have. I mean, you're in a little bit of a tailspin. But that being said, talent for talent, you should be mowing down the Detroit Tigers. You should be mowing down the Pittsburgh Pirates, and it's what are you going to do in game to stop the bleeding, right? So it's like, what buttons can you push to reverse these things? And it's like, so when you have a starter that's going bad, you know what I mean? Are you immediately gonna hit the pause button, and try to save your pitcher? Are you going to continue to roll him out there? Are you going to are you going to play the matchups like you constantly do, or are you going to switch things up? Are you going to allow your lefties to lefty hitters to face lefties every once in a while? Because the guys that you have that are on your bench that you're trying to play the matchups for just aren't cutting it. You know what I mean? That's sometimes you have sometimes as a manager, you just have to do things out of order, just out of attrition, because certain things just are not working. The buttons that you're pushing, just, there's no connection with the button that you're pushing, the light's not turning on. So you have to do some things that, are out of context for the situation of what's going on. Like you have to, do things backwards every once in a while.
Take risks.
Take risks, right? What's funny is, early in the season, after the whole offseason of hearing about how this is going to be a more of a station-to-station contact hitting team, I'm like, okay, cool, because we actually have the speed in the lineup to be able to do that.
They don't even play with speed.
Julio Rodriguez
hit home runs.
Luke Raley, Dylan Moore, some of these guys who can swipe a bag, applying the hit and run when you have a runner on first base, and the whole right side of your infield is the whole right side of the infield is in double play depth, and you have a huge ass hole. So, are you going to dial up the hit and run? Are you going to put the game in motion? Are you going to put pressure on the defense? Nope.
They won't even bunt when there's like a guy at third with 0 outs, and they won't even do that.
Right. Well, they
should.
They don't have guys who are able to put down a bunt. That's also another problem. But it's willing to do the little things necessary to win a ball game, right? So like when you see good teams playing baseball and they're willing to accept one run because they know that the big inning is later on down the road. So teams are like, the Dodgers are a perfect example of willing to take a run, right? Where it's like, okay, cool. So we're going to take a walk. We're going to take a base hit. We're going to get a sacrifice fly, and we're going to get a single. That's it. That's a run. Inning over. And it's like, as a Mariner fan, you're like, all right, cool. Well, they stopped the damage at one run. It's like, no. They're just preparing themselves for later on down the road. They're manufacturing runs in an inning where they otherwise wouldn't be able to get a double or a dinger. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what good teams do. Good teams that understand exactly the situation is at hand. And the Mariners, as much as you love them, they try, but they're terrible in 2 strike counts. They literally cannot get a base hit to save their life with runners in scoring position.
And their swinging approach is atrocious.
Their swinging approach is absolutely atrocious. And so now it gets back to, and I've been saying this the entire year, is this a player talent situation, or is this a hitting philosophy situation? Because we saw home dude Ty France go to Cincinnati, and all of a sudden he starts hitting again.
Makes me wonder, like, if David Bell does not last in Cincinnati for whatever reason, I would like to take a nice little look at him, because he seems to have more balls to manage a team than what Scott Service can do. But what I want to do also is a couple things I want to do before we head out. I want to check out this road trip. The Mariners were 1-8, which Flick of the Switch did correct me on that. Thanks very much for doing that. I want to go to each game and let's just see if the Mariners if we can reflect just a little bit. We don't have to go too much into detail. But we're going to say yes or no if that was a winnable game. The first one, of course, Mariners got routed by the Tigers 15-1. And I'm going to say, I'll give that one a pass. I know I'm not supposed to, but you're going against Scooball. Fine. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. It is what it is. It was just bad baseball. I'm not going to lose sleep over that one. Wednesday, 3-2. I think this is the one they pulled Brian Wu. Actually, that was the one they pulled Brian Wu.
Yeah.
That one they should have won, because had they just kept in Brian Wu one more inning, or if they let Andres Munoz pitch one more inning or whatever it was, they were like literally one good decision with their pitching to win that game. That one should have been a 1 game. I'm going to put 2 and 7.
That was the game that I was at. That second game where Brian Wu was on the hill the day after George Kirby absolutely got rocked. And oh, by the way, he left George Kirby in there instead of absolutely like pulling him right when it was apparent. You know what I mean? Like right when it was apparent that George Kirby didn't have his stuff and he was getting lit up, that should have been the moment he hooked him, and they should have went to a bullpen day, right? They should automatically just hit the about face and went with a bullpen day, bringing in a guy like Colin Snyder who can pitch a few innings and just righting the ship right then and there. But it didn't happen. Game 2, Brian Wu has a beautiful game, and I thought Scott was gonna pull him after 5. You know what I mean? Because Brian Wu has been dealing with injuries, and you're wondering whether or not there was going to be another short leash type of start for Brian Wu. And I was surprised when he got into the 6th. And then I was surprised again when he pitched the 7th. So I was okay with him not coming. I was okay with him not coming out in the 8th because, I thought Scott was doing something uncomfortable by letting him go 7 to begin with, anyways, right? But he makes the right decision. He doesn't dink around with his bullpen. He brings out Jimmy Garcia, right? That's the right move. He brings out Jimmy Garcia, and unfortunately, Jimmy Garcia right now is just not pit. For whatever reason, his fastball is straight and right down the middle of the plate. And of course, he got burned with a 2-run home run, and that was, the Mariners had a 2-run lead. The biggest problem in that game was the fact that the Mariners couldn't string together multiple base hits. They were able to score 2, and they had a 2-run lead in the bottom of the 8th inning. Right now, imagine if this was a 4-1 game. We're not having this conversation, and I agree. At least in that game, the Mariners lost with their best players. You know what I mean? At least you can say that. They're less lost with their best pitchers. I'm willing to accept that loss, but I agree with you. That should have been a win.
So we're gonna say 2-7 now. The next game I thought was even more frustrating because Bryce Miller was dealing the heck out of it, and Scott Service still pulled him out. I said just one more freaking inning doesn't happen, and that's where I think Jimmy Garcia was pitching that game again, so that's where he was being overused. Yeah, they did Jimmy Garcia. They could have used anyone else at least. They could have used Chargois.
Well, I liked it. And for this reason, because he went right back to the game before, Jimmy Garcia gives up the 2-run bomb, blows the lead, and then they have to have Andres Munoz come in to right the ship. And I like the fact that Service went back to Jimmy to show him some faith that that he didn't lose faith in the guy. And I like that, right? Because you want to see Jimmy Garcia bounce back, but 100%. This is this is the first time in a long time that I've seen Bryce Miller that electric. That dude was unhittable. And at the point, it was 7 innings. He had given up only 2 hits at that point. And it's I understand pitch,
9 Ks.
I understand pitch counts, right? Flick of the switch right here says analytics. For Christ's sake, Scott has no feel for the game as it unfolds. 100%. I agree. But that being said, it's sometimes you have to throw analytics out of the out the window and do again, we were just talking about this is where you have to do things that are uncomfortable and that go against conventional wisdom to try to stop the bleeding. If that means having Bryce Miller come out for one more inning, or at least start the 8th. If he gives up a single or a double, fine, pull him, but at least bring him out to start the 8th. But again, that was a situation where in game 2, it's a bullpen day. You can only manage 2 runs against the Tigers, one of the worst bullpens in baseball. You only manage 2 runs. And again, in game 3 of that Tiger series, you're managing only 1 run on 1 hit. That's it. 1 run on 1 hit in game 3.
And that was on a bases loaded walk where they scored.
1 run on 1 hit. 1.
I think we can agree that they should have won that game easily.
Oh, without a doubt. Your lineup, but what's funny is your lineup 1 through 6 is fine, but then it's Canzone, Moore, and Rojas.
We're gonna say 3 and 6.
What's funny is the the Mariners should have went 2-3, 2-1 on that in that Tiger series. They had very good start. They had very good to great starting pitching in that series outside of the George Kirby loss.
And yet that offense managed what?
Barely anything.
4 runs.
They managed,
maybe?
4 runs.
4 runs. It's ridiculous, man.
Let's go to the Pirates series, and let's speed up just a little bit. The Friday game against Paul Skeens, was that one winnable, or was that one there was nothing much you could have done?
No, that was actually easily winnable because it felt like at times that the Mariners, the Mariners had Skeens on the ropes. You know what I mean? There were times where I was like, oh, okay. Because I coming into that game, I'm like, okay, cool. This is going to be a 12 strikeout game because Paul Skeens has been absolutely dealing this year. And I'm like, oh, crap. It's Paul Skeens. And to the Mariners' credit, they had him on the ropes a few times. But, again, but this was the reverse opposite where, Logan Gilbert, 3 runs on 5 hits. When you're looking for that consistency in starting pitching, it just wasn't there. And, he only goes 6 1/3, 3 runs, 5 hits, 6 Ks, 2 walks, and, against a team that literally plays with no fear on offense. That's what you like. That's what I love about the Pittsburgh Pirates when it comes to their offensive approach. It's like, I'm just going to put the bat out in front and wherever it lands, right? And more oftentimes than not, it results in base hits. They like to steal bases. They like to put the game in motion, and they took advantage of a pretty bad Mariner defense. So I would like to say that should have been a winnable game, but just like that first game in Detroit, I actually think it should have been a win. It should have been a win.
Now it's 4-5.
Yeah.
And had they been 4-5, they're just 1 game back from the division. And now let's go to the next game where it was 7-2 with Luis Castillo pitching. With, by the way, he was allowed to go 100+ when he was struggling.
Sure.
Would you say that should have been winnable, or was that whatever?
No, that played out the way that it was supposed to play out. Luis Castillo, I hate to say it. Luis Castillo was not an ace. If Luis Castillo was in New York pitching for the Yankees or in LA pitching for the Dodgers, he's like a number 3.
I think he's a number 3 now. I thought he was a number 3 going into 23.
No, 100%, right? They're paying him like an ace, but you're not getting ace results, right? He is on a very, very good team, a World Series caliber team. He's a 3. In Seattle, he should be a 3 or a 2. You know what I mean? But that's the reality. It's like, since he got that contract extension, since 2022 when he came over and was electric, he has been mid at best. I know that's what the cool kids like to use. They like to use the term mid. That's exactly what he is. He's a mid-rotation arm. Sometimes he pitches well, and sometimes he gets lit the F up, and this is one of those games where he just got lit up. And so, no, the Mariners actually deserve that L.
So you wouldn't adjust it like the other few games. You just leave it at that.
Where you have, you go 5 1/3 and you give up 4 runs on 5 hits and you walk 3, and your offense gives you 2 runs. Well, they got 8 hits, but they only managed 2 runs. No, you deserve to lose. You deserve to lose that game.
So we're leaving it 4-5.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Sunday game they won finally. Sure. And then Dodgers game.
But isn't that so Mariners though? Like when you're in a position where you've lost 5 in a row, and then all of a sudden the offense just comes out of nowhere to score 10 runs. You know what I mean? Where it
was so Mariner.
And you're like, okay, well, maybe this now all of a sudden maybe they've broken out of whatever funk they're in, and so now that the Dodger series, this is a team where historically over the last couple of years the Mariners have showed up against other playoff teams. They've showed it, they showed themselves well against playoff teams, and it's like, okay, cool, this is your litmus test now. This is the test, right? Like, are you legit? It's the Dodgers. From 1 to 9 in their lineup, that they have the ability to kill you in every spot of that lineup. Their pitching is good. Their bullpen's good. Now this is going to be like, can you win the 1-run game? Can you do it? Nope.
To the Dodgers game, game 1, Brian Wu.
Yeah.
Would you consider that winnable, or like there was nothing you could have done? Granted, Brian Wu pitched very well. It's just they completely fell apart.
You know, the interesting thing is that you're going up against
A guy, Gavin Stone,
who's been decent this year, and it's so you're going, good starter versus good starter. So you would assume that the scoring is going to be low. So you're going to have to pick and choose your poison. But what the interesting thing was, Brian Wu pitched well, pitched 6 1/3. And he did his job. And again, Jimmy Garcia extended things. I just think that when you look at, I'll give you credit, man.
I will say that we did a very good job against Shohei Ohtani and some of the big boys in their lineup. We kind of neutralized their ability to do damage, right? And so at that point, it's up to the Mariner offense to be able to deliver. I think they earned that loss in that one too, because for a team that was able to manage, for a team that was in a position where they possibly could have, they only managed 2 hits in that game.
So would you leave it at 4 and 5 at that point?
I would say that was easily a loss.
So we'll leave it at 4 and 5. And I think we're just going to agree that the game game 2 days ago should have been a winnable game. So it's going to be 5 and 4. And then probably, even with their 5 and 4, yesterday probably would have been the same thing. But at least those other games would have been salvaged. And had they've just gone 5 and 4, they would still be right in the tails of Houston. Could have tied, could have been within 1 game. So again, had they just made one little good decision on each of those games, could have gotten 4 wins out of that, and they would be either tied or a game back.
The second game really
bugged me though, because for finally, what like when you and I get together and we talk when we do a broadcast, and what do I always say that I want to see early? I want to see the offense get off to a good start, a couple runs, early. Put a team on the ropes, give your starter some breathing room, right? So they don't feel like they have to be perfect every single time they touch the rubber. And listen, they got 3 runs early. They were up 3-0. Like, that should be enough. And I was jazzed because Cal Raleigh gets the double, and then Polanco hits gets the base hit that scores 2 runs, and all of a sudden there's vibes, man. I was like, ooh, they got an early lead.
Ooh!
I was like, this is not Mariner like. And then Bryce still gives up 2 on 5, and he only goes 4, and then Snyder pitches pretty well. Saucedo had a little bit of a rough go, but the bullpen, man.
Yeah.
The bullpen.
Well,
this has not been a good bullpen. This road trip has not been good for the bullpen.
It has not. And now,
but yes, I agree. If they, if they did their job that they were supposed to do and managed to take 2 out of 3 in Detroit, and 2
out of 3 in 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh, and even 1 out of 3 in Dodgers, we would have been okay with that.
We would have been fine with that. As a matter of fact, it wasn't perfect, but it also wasn't a train wreck.
All they had to do was go 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, and then 1 out of 3 with Dodgers. We would have been okay. But going into the series against the Giants, and this is going to be the last topic until I got to go, but here is the starters that are lined up. Friday, Luis Castillo against Birdsong, who I just added to my fantasy team because you want to put a +5 fantasy guy, or +5 pitcher, a plus ERA 5 pitcher against the Mariners because he'll get 10 strikeouts magically. Saturday is going to be interesting. It's going to be George Kirby against Blake Snell. And I have a feeling Blake Snell is going to come out with a chip on his shoulder because he also admitted that the Mariners never even made an attempt. They never even dialed his number. And the Mariners somehow allowed the Houston Astros and the Giants to go all the way to Shoreline, Washington, where Blake Snell's hometown is,
Yeah.
They went to take a look at him, to talk to him, and right on the Mariners' backyard, and the Mariners didn't even attempt to even make a conversation to see what's possible. So I think that's going to be I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder, and I do expect the Giants to win that game.
I would too. It's ridiculous, right? Like, you didn't even call him and say, hey, so, we're your hometown team. We know that you're interested. What are you looking for? Nope. Okay, that's a little too pricey. Okay, fair enough. Go to the Giants. They didn't even do that. They didn't even check in to see what he was asking for. This Giant series, I wouldn't be surprised if we lose 2 out of 3.
The only one I can see is maybe tomorrow.
Saturday.
I don't even know about that.
Game.
Sunday game, Brian Wu versus Harrison. I mean, for some reason, with the vibe that's going, I could still see a sweep out of that series. I hate to say it, but I could just see it.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. Who's throwing against Snell on Saturday?
George Kirby.
Here's what I can see. I can see Luis Castillo getting absolutely bludgeoned. I can see them getting bludgeoned on Friday. I just don't see I don't see how Luis Castillo is like, maybe he pulls vintage Castillo and goes 7 and only gives up 1, but the way he's been trending lately, he's been getting absolutely bludgeoned. I can see Kirby and Wu pitching well. We're talking 7 innings per start, keeping the score low, keeping the Giants off the base pass. But again, this all comes back to what type of offense is going to show up. If Scott's giving this team a breather, telling them to sit in a hot tub, go to the zoo, get your mind off of baseball for a full day. Okay, fine. So what offense is going to show up?
Actually, I don't think anyone's going to show up, because, like I said, if I was the manager, they should spend an entire day at T-Mobile right when they get off the plane, maybe give them an hour nap, but then after that, practice, grind, because discipline's needed. Like, I know this is an extreme example, but the U.S. hockey team of 1980, when USA tied against, who did they tie? Norway or something? It was like Norway, and I know it was just based off the movie, but it was based off a true story, and I thought that Disney movie was pretty accurate.
Right, and the and I think Herb Brooks
was upset by it, right? Because
he was upset, and he made them practice, do those skates for an hour or 2.
Yeah,
and it only ended because one guy threw his hockey stick because he was pissed, and then Herb Brooks yep.
Micah Rusioni.
I heard that part was United
Minnesota.
States. I heard that part wasn't even true.
What team do you play for? The United States of America.
The problem is, that wasn't actually even true. It was actually ended because Micah Rusioni or whoever, he just threw his hockey stick, and then Herb Brooks all right, you guys are done. But hey, glad I gave you guys hell. And that's exactly what a manager should do, is make them practice that day off. Do not give mental breaks, because they do not deserve it. They went on a freaking drinking fest after losing a series. I'm not saying it was a drinking fest, but it looked like they did.
This is the interesting thing when you look at the schedule, okay? 3 against San Francisco, 3 against Tampa Bay at home. A 6-game homestand against 2 teams that are easily beatable. And then they have
Tampa Bay's better than the Mariners now, and they were selling.
Right. And then you have the road trip. 3 in LA, 4 in Oakland, 3 in St. Louis. Again, 3 winnable. This is like if you want to erase all the bad vibes, it's this portion of the schedule as we're bouncing into September that you need to take care of, because the Giants aren't world beaters. The Rays aren't world beaters, and you get them at home. So it's not like it's not like you're down in Tropicana, which had been a house of pain for the Mariners, right? So you have them at home, and then you have the Angels and A's for 7 games. Like, if you want to get the fans back into your corner, you take advantage of these. You take advantage of these next 13 games. Like, this would be a very good opportunity for to get your goodwill back. But And it starts with accountability. It starts with culpability. And then also, I don't want to hear good vibes talk. I don't want to hear the arrogance of Scott Service anymore. Do yourself a favor, put the best lineup on as you possibly can on the field. And if that means no more Dylan Moore every single day, no more Leo Rivas, do yourself a favor.
Would you call up Cole Young before
100%.
JP Crawford? They should,
100%.
but they're so
100%.
obsessed with that service time crap, so it's not going to happen.
Well, but the crazy thing is, I'll say this. Now, a lot of people will say that you don't want to disrupt the development. But that being said, he's already at AA, and I think he's already got 100 games at AA now. And they got to
give him a shot, like just one freaking week until Crawford's back, just to see what he does.
Just like the post deadline shot in the arm, which they did get for a few games. Like one of the things that. Yeah, I mean, JP Crawford is now, I think I read somewhere JP Crawford's now hitting off a tee, and I think he's going to go on a rehab assignment. But the reality is, like, even if it's just for a week or 2 weeks.
Give Cole Young a shot.
Just
like
Cole Young up.
Like Ryan Bliss, where he was like that spark in the offense temporarily.
Yeah, it's like, give him a cup of coffee. Bring him up, give him a cup of coffee, put him in a major league clubhouse.
Let him sit on the bench and vibe. Just do that.
Here's the thing. If you're going to call up Cole Young, he's got to play. And I would send Rivas down. Rivas, it's funny because my buddy just texted me yesterday and said, Jose Caballero, I think, is leading the American League in stolen bases. And I was like, and it's like, his numbers aren't good, but he leads the league in stolen bases. It's like an area where the Mariners desperately need somebody that's going to swipe a bag and be aggressive. Imagine if Jose Caballero, I can't believe I'm saying it because he's a terrible player, but imagine if Caballero was on this team. Anyways, I digress. Bring him up, man. Bring him up, play him. And it is what it is, because you can't use Dylan Moore every single day anymore. You literally can't use Josh Rojas every day anymore, right? So you have to do something different. Okay, do something different. And yeah, I'm 100% with you. It's like bring him up, give him a cup of coffee. You play him every day until JP Crawford gets back, and and see what that does. You're absolutely right. You brought up Ryan Bliss, and when Ryan Bliss initially came up, he was a little bit of a spark.
And let's take a look at the Astros series really quick, and let's not go too much into it. But this proves that this is the next week or two is literally the Mariners' final lifeline. Like the lifeline is the favorable schedule on both ends. Astros have Baltimore Orioles for 4 games at Baltimore, at Philadelphia for 3, and 4 games against Kansas City. This is a perfect opportunity to erase and make up for everything that happened in that road trip 1-8. And if they could at least, not saying play 500 ball, but if they could at least play 54%, if they even do 54%, and
which is one game above 500, man. One game above 500.
Astros play, you would assume, unless they play on fire, but let's say hypothetically they play less than 500 ball, Mariners could at least make it like 2 games back, or maybe even tie.
We've been saying this all year, that all they need is a mediocre performance to finish 500, to be 500.
A participation trophy type performance.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Reflect the Sun, yes, he is. Jose Caballero was one of the worst defenders I've ever seen, and his actually hitting approach is actually not great at all. But he puts bat to ball. Anyway, by the way, hey, I got this for you. Cole Young, right now, he's played 104 games with AA Arkansas, 463 plate appearances, 393 at bats. He's batting .270 with a 369 OBP. Slugging .400 with an OPS of 768. 8 home runs, 47 RBIs, but he's got 58 walks. 58 walks, and he's got 106 hits.
Call him up, man. Let him play. Especially when the roster expands in September just by a little bit. Let the kid play.
Yeah.
I would
But they
actually,
won't.
you know, I would bring them up right now. But yeah, no, they won't. So, you know, that's pretty sad, isn't it? That we're talking about that all they have to do is just be mediocre. You know, a performance trophy, you know, like a participation trophy level type of type of performance. Like, they don't have to be great, but can you just be mediocre? Like that's where we're at.
Even maintain a 236 batting average like the Mariners did in 2010, and they might actually play pretty well. That's all they got to do. Like Softy said, you just got to be mediocre.
The funny thing is the 2022 Seattle Mariners didn't necessarily light the world on fire offensively, but they were mediocre. And it was good enough to get them in. Just good enough. Didn't light the world on fire.
2023 Mariners could have done the same thing. They were 12th in Major League Baseball in offense, which we were saying it was a bad offense, but they still kind of did okay.
It was a bad offense. But yeah, I mean, they did just enough. Enough. And and you mentioned earlier, like had they just stood pat, right? So yeah, okay, so maybe they don't bring back Teoscar Hernandez and they still trade for Randy Arozarena. But
or Luke Raley.
You're right. Well, you get what I'm saying, right? So
yeah,
they still have Jared Kelnick and they still have Suarez playing third base, right? And they just make the deal for Randy Arozarena instead of Teoscar Hernandez.
What could have been?
What could have been?
Like that's, by the way, that's mediocre. That's mediocre.
Just like 95, had they just done mediocre with their moves, like kept Tino for one more year, Bill Risley, Andy Bennis, Vince Coleman, had they just done that, they win the division. And they would have embarrassed the Yankees. Because the Yankees wouldn't have Tino. They probably would have overpaid for a first bit. They would have gotten probably Paul Sorrento. And I will still take Tino over Paul Sorrento.
But by the way, they could have easily done way better than Andy Bennis. Andy Bennis, when he was in Seattle, still wasn't great. He really wasn't. But you know what he did? I'll give Andy Bennis this. He ate innings. He was like Tim Belcher. The reason why they brought him in is because he would go 6 innings per start. He'd go 6-7 innings per start. He would eat innings. Now he would also give up 3 or 4 runs, but you also had an offense that was like averaging 6 a game. So, you can get into a bullpen battle, but I digress. What are they saying now? Hey, if
last comment of the day I'm going to say is, if Scott Service gets fired today, will he have an emergency stream?
Yes.
I'll think about it. I'll personally think about it because I'm not sure yet, but we'll see.
No, if you don't, I will, because yes, that is a reason to celebrate. It is a reason to celebrate.
It would be.
Before we go, I'll just say this. That it's time. It's time. This franchise has given them a decade. Has given them a decade of run. And, what's interesting about this was that, in 2016 and 2018, when Jerry Dipoto was quote unquote Trader Jerry and reshaped this Major League Baseball team, Scott Service couldn't get this team into the playoffs. And then they reset and then they rebuilt. And out of nowhere, they win 90 games in 2021. But again, they missed the playoffs. They get to the playoffs in 2022, and then they collapse in 2023. And now they're collapsing again. It's time.
It's absolutely time
to hit the refresh button on this. And also, it's time to hit the refresh button on the front office as well, too, man. Like, you've had the same amount of run, and everything that you've tried has failed except for one time. One time that dart hit the bullseye.
And it was pure luck. Let's just be honest. It was pure freaking luck.
And it's pure, yeah, exactly. It was pure luck. And that's the reality is we have 3 more years left of this window being open because we still have these players locked in for another 3 more years before they hit free agency. And chances are pretty good.
is running out.
Right. And chances are pretty good these guys are not going to re-sign in Seattle. So you have 3 years.
I think some by the end of the season might demand a trade. And I think George Kirby's gonna be the first one to do it.
I actually think Cal Raleigh's going to be the first one to do it.
Because he's just done. And the thing is, and I'm so consumed by this, and I know I said I gotta go, but I am consumed by this. But if Cal Raleigh and George Kirby demand a trade, which I expect them to do, I will 100% support it.
It's tough, man. But the reality is, the one way that you can avoid it is by firing your president of baseball, firing your president of baseball operations and your field manager, and you're bringing in somebody who is a winner, a proven winner.
Epstein and Joe Madden, please, let's make that combo happen.
Or bring in Dave Dombrowski, who's won multiple World Series, right? So you're absolutely right. Theo Epstein, Joe Madden, whatever the case may be. Bring in somebody who is going to send that direct message that, okay, here's the thing, man, you're the core, and we want to win with you guys for as long as you're here. But what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate this minor league organization. And here's the thing. I love prospects, but you're gone because we have a mandate to get this team to a World Series. So Laz Montez, Cole Young, Colt Emerson, guys who, top prospects, but guess what? We need to actually add legitimate firepower to this Major League Baseball team. We actually have to add legit firepower to the back end of this bullpen. You know what I mean? So I hate to say it, but maybe they gut the minor league system and put together a major league team that's going to compete for the World Series for the next 3 years before they blow it up again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's going to do it. I just want to say thank you to everyone. We had quite the engagement this morning, considering it was starting at 6:30. I'm glad I was able to soften up the bad traffic driving to your 9 to 5 dreading jobs, or if you were getting ready for work. I'm glad I was able to do this for you guys. And I just want to say thank you for being here. Hit that subscribe button and do the same thing for Swing for the Fences. And by the way, he's got a good profile picture that he upgraded on Twitter. And Steve, make sure you do that for your YouTube channel too.
Yep, sure did. I already did it. Yep.
And everyone have a good day, and go Mariners, painfully saying.
Go Cougs and Mariners.